I have a survey that came from a place that I rarely mention, but I use them. I'd say 15 to 20% of the data that I get comes from these people. It's Our World in Data. And
I love those guys.
yeah, they've got all kinds of interesting things there. But they've done a survey asking, it's a comparison. On the one hand, what are the things that Americans died of in the last year they did was 2023. And they've got them all ranked, and there's a whole bunch of these things. The ones I'm going to look at are heart disease, cancer, suicide, drug overdose, homicide, and terrorism. So these things, and in effect, what's the probability of dying from each of these things? And then they survey major news outlets and count the number of times that these things show up in the news. And they show them here side by side. And what you can do is, I created what I think of as a hype index, which is comparing the frequency with which the thing appears in the news to the probability of it killing you. So a hype index of 1 is the thing is appearing as with the same frequency that it is a danger. Any hype frequency below 1, the thing isn't getting enough press. Anything above 1 is getting too much press relative to its danger.
I'm just going to say before you get started that it's a crime that you did not include shark attack.
Shark attack is interesting. I've said this before on Words and Numbers, that the probability of you being bitten by a New Yorker is greater than the probability of you being bitten by a shark.
Anybody who's been to New York knows that to be true.
Yeah.
I've heard it said that you're more likely to be struck by lightning or even win the lottery than you are to be bitten by a shark or killed by a shark.
There's all kinds of interesting things when it comes to statistics like this that reveals how people don't behave rationally. I'll give you an example. A company I'm aware of has a rule that they're not more than one of senior management can travel on the same plane. That's the idea being, of course, that if it's a bunch of them, plane goes down, you've lost some core competency. However, they have no such rule for them driving together in a car. But the probability of them dying in the car accident is way higher than the probability of them dying in the plane accident.
It's always funny when we start shaking our heads at the same moment, right? You just know that it's a stupid thing when we both start shaking our heads like this. Anyway, sorry to interrupt the shark thing, but
along those lines, because I really got annoyed at this. I don't know if I mentioned this to you a few weeks ago, but the church that I'm a member of here, they decided that they wanted to have a active shooter drill to help protect people from active shooters. And I said, well, hang on a second. You don't have a safe driving course to protect people from when they're on the roads. And I said it as a comparison for them to say, oh, we don't have that, so clearly we shouldn't have the active shooter thing. Their response...
No, both. Yeah, they're going to have both now.
Yeah, now they're doing both.
Yeah.
It's astounding.
Next time, Ant, what you need to do is say, do we have a drill for flood? Because the church could become flooded and we might all drown. Then, do we have fire drills? Because the church could clearly burn down. Many have. And on and on and on until you make it so asinine that they just cancel all of them.
Right. Or with my luck, they would institute all of them. But let me go back to this.
Were it me, I'd be looking for a new church, but I'm just throwing that out.
Let me go back to this data, and we'll put the chart. And what you see in this chart is all the various things that can kill you, the probability of... It's not the probability of dying from the thing, it's the fraction of Americans who died from the thing. So let me start off with heart disease. Heart disease is 29%. So it's not there's a 29% chance of you dying of heart disease. Of course, that varies for all kinds of things. It's 29% of people who died in 2023 died of heart disease. Now, if heart disease got press coverage that was proportional to the chance of you dying from this thing, then roughly 29% of things mentioned in the news would involve heart disease. And in fact, only 2.5% did. So heart disease is getting 1/10 of the coverage that it should be getting.
Well,
Cancer is getting 2/10 of the coverage that it should be getting. Suicide comes a little bit closer. 2.1% of Americans who died in 2023 died of suicide, and suicide got 3.7% of coverage in the media. So suicide's getting almost twice as much coverage as it should, given the frequency with which it occurs. The list goes on and on. Homicide, which you and I have talked about a lot, Americans' fixation with homicide. Of course, the fixation is understandable, because what do we do with our spare time? We watch movies and television, and it's always about homicide, right? So we have this overblown view of how common this is. In the U.S., 2023, 0.8% of people who died of homicide versus 47% news coverage. So homicide is being covered at almost 60 times the rate that it should be covered in the media. 60 times.
All right, slow down. It's covered 60 times the rate it occurs.
Right.
When you use the word should there, I bristle.
Well, okay, so when I say should, what I mean is if we were to give it the same level of coverage that is commensurate with its level of threat.
But it's fascinating. And it's scary. So, of course, it's going to lead the news every time it happens. The same way that a bridge collapse is going to lead the news every time it happens. And we're never going to cover all the bridges that didn't collapse.
Right. But what happens is the thing creates a feedback loop that as the media covers it more, people think it's a greater threat. And so the media has even greater incentive to cover it even more. The big extreme here is terrorism. 1/1000th of 1% of Americans who died in 2023 died of terrorism. 1/1000th of 1%.
That number is probably inflated due to definition.
It's probably inflated given how we define it, right?
Right.
But nonetheless, that's the official number, 1/1000th of 1%, 14% coverage. So we're covering in the media terrorism 14,000 times the rate at which you would expect us to cover it given the actual threat level.
Yeah, and you've just happened upon another explanation of what we've been saying for years. If it bleeds, it leads.
Yeah. And I understand that. What makes me sad is I encounter so many people, usually when I'm talking about something that has to do with the economy, usually when it's something like how much taxes the rich pay or inequality or poverty or whatever it is, and people just blurt out as truth, well, the following is the case. And they're completely wrong. They're completely wrong in large part because of this thing. What leads in the news? Billionaires and the poor and inequality. And you come away with an outsized view of what's actually going on.
It happens. It's always happened. And it always will happen. And the best we can do is caution people never to be taken in by it.
Yeah, right, just be aware. Be aware that it's out there.
When you click on the news, understand that you're seeing outlying events. You're not seeing what daily life looks like anywhere. And you can go to other countries and kind of walk around in residential neighborhoods. I do this all the time, just to kind of get a sense of what life is like, the smells, the sounds, the regular stuff. And regular life everywhere is largely the same. And outlying events everywhere are largely outlying events. Everybody's terrified of them. Nobody should be. It's like the shark attack thing. Should you be deeply concerned that you're going to be bitten by a shark? Well, no, unless you fall off a boat in shark-infested waters.
Mm-hmm.
If you're on I remember when Jaws came out, what was it, back in 1977. I was just a boy, and nobody wanted to go to the beach, as if a great white shark might be in the waters off of the New England coast.
Mm-hmm.
No self-respecting shark would be found in waters that cold. I mean, it's ridiculous. It was a great movie. It terrified everyone, but the terror lasted and was real. People didn't want to go to the beach for years afterwards. I think it took until Jaws 3D when they finally made it not terrifying.
At Words and Numbers, we spend a lot of time talking about what's going on in the economy and the government, but fundamentally, all of this boils down to one thing. The greatest threat facing modern society is a lack of civility and respect, that people who disagree somehow find it difficult, if not impossible, to discuss their differences in a civil manner. We at CiVL are interested in upgrading civilization by encouraging people to engage civilly with each other. If you share this idea, please join us by subscribing at civil.com. That's CiVL.com.